Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan with our midweek mashup as the Eagles, man. They are cruising at them 5-0. Eagles, 49ers, and then there's the rest of the NFC. Kind of like we thought going in, but as we look back on it, we knew that for the first 6 weeks, there were a lot of winnable games for the Eagles, right? And then once Miami comes to town, then the fun begins from the schedule standpoint. I don't know that I really, thought here as they head into this Jets game in week 6 that they were going to be 5-0 with a chance to be 6-0. I thought maybe, with the newness of coordinators and with defense that maybe one team, maybe two along the way would pick them off. But man, they've been really, really tough, man. They are a tough team.
I mean, look, the Washington game was the only game where you thought maybe because of the way it started that, they might be in trouble here, but good teams always find a way. You find a way to win. I mean, you're never going to be perfect. It's just impossible. And it's just a situation where talent, and this is my big takeaway when we talk about the Rams game, in our post-game show, talent went out against the Rams. There's clearly way more talent in the Rams, and you could make a case they should have won by way more than 9 points, but hey, they won the game. They're one of only two teams, as you said, that's undefeated. There would be something else in week 13 here against the Niners if both teams were undefeated. I mean, can you imagine? First of all, the Niners are still pissed off that Purdy got hurt in that game. That's it's going to be on their mind. And by the way, he's been playing great. Mm-hmm. It would be kind of cool if that game was, and quite frankly, it could be for home field. Think about that throughout the playoffs.
It really could.
It's got to happen before then. I know, but I'm just saying.
No, I know, but I don't even think it's like taboo to talk about that because both teams have been so good, right, in different ways. And again, it's the two undefeated teams right now in the NFL and two teams that people thought going into the year were going to be pretty good. So it's, hey, man, that game really could be for the number 1 seed, depending on how things go.
And the Niners have been way more dominant than the Eagles. I mean, it's just what they did to the Cowboys was winning by 32 was just. It felt like 60. I mean, if you remember the Broncos-Dolphins game, what was it, 70 to whatever that?
Oh, that's right.
It snowballed that Cowboys game, and I know obviously Eagle fans should have loved that. It was kind of funny, because Micah Parsons was talking, and it was pretty much a massacre.
Yeah,
I mean, do you know that they have not scored less than 30 points in any of their games?
The 49ers.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy what they're doing.
I'm not sure like which team is more like a video game right now, them or the Dolphins. I know the Dolphins have lost the game.
Yeah.
But it's how they're winning, how they're scoring. It seems like whoever they give the ball to rips off a 25-yard play on every play. Whether it's Achan or Mostert or Tyreek Hill or Waddle. It's like a video game, man. It's kind of crazy.
I mean, Purdy, it's just the last pick overall in last year's draft. People say, and it's fair, that he's a system quarterback. He's in a specific West Coast system, an old school system. And Kyle Shanahan creates great throwing lane for him to make, but he makes the throws. That's the thing. You can say whatever you want. People want to knock the guy. But, it was kind of like with Hurts. Last year, people were knocking him because his numbers are spectacular and all that talent around him, great offensive line, but he makes throws and he's accurate and all that. And you saw his big jump. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Purdy is he had no offseason because he had surgery. Was not available to training camp, and that's the thing that surprises me, to miss all their OTAs and to play at this super duper high level. And he's obviously in the running for MVP.
Right,
it's pretty remarkable. Great coaching matters, folks. That's another part of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I'm kind of hoping, from a spectator standpoint, that both of those teams, the Eagles and the 49ers, are undefeated going into their matchup, because that would make it just add to it. It'd be an amazing matchup if that were the case.
And the Eagles' schedule is way harder than the Niners coming up. And the Niners do play Cleveland this week, which is not going to be easy. Their defense has played great. Then they play the Vikings, the Bengals, who have disappointed, the Jaguars, Bucks, Seahawks. And then week 13, and as we know, the Eagles' schedule is a bear, man. It's going to be fun, though. The thing is, after this week against the Jets are struggling. Mm-hmm. Dolphins, as you mentioned, the Commandos again, then the Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Yeah, that second half. It's going to be a second half to remember. We'll see.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this game coming up against the Jets, and I'm looking forward to, in this podcast, us going through some transactions that have happened in the last 24 hours, some injury updates, and also just going through a little bit of what we saw on the All-22, and then a quick little look ahead to that game against the Jets. And of course, I'm looking forward to all the great content we got this week. The new Gun on One will be out today. It'll drop at noon. It's a great one with Brandon Graham, and Gunnar and Graham there's like a running thing with Gunnar and Graham that Brandon Graham has accused Derek Gunn of rooting against him and the Eagles for like 10 years in a row. And after every game, he walks through the tunnel. You didn't think we were going to win, D Gunn, right?
But,
and D Gunn, like, I picked you guys like 6 weeks in a row. What are you talking about?
well, I know that they have this great relationship and they laugh and stuff, but it had to start somewhere. Did it
I think it was the Super Bowl year when everybody
yeah.
said, they're not going to win without Carson Wentz, or how hard it's going to be, yada, yada. Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, John T. Filippo comes on our show and we asked John about that. And John was very honest. He's, there was tears shed when they were coming back from the Rams game. I mean, on the flight back. I mean, they won the division that Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
In 2017, but they lost their starting quarterback for the year. They knew he tore his ACL. They got the early information.
Yeah.
I mean, who knew? I mean, it's a crazy business, but yeah, I can't wait to see this interview. BG is, I wonder what BG is going to do when he's done playing. I know he's going to live in the but
it's a great question. He actually talked about it a little bit. He talked about how long he expects to play and what he might do when he's done. There was a lot of probably a lot of stuff about BG that he's not talked about before in that interview. So
awesome.
Including his own, relationship with the fan base, how it started versus, how it's ending and everything like that. So it's great.
Did he block, I never met him in my life. I think he might, we get along fine now. We're awesome. I never said a word about the guy negative. I think he blocked me on Twitter. Like, you remember he's blocking everyone in 2012.
Yes, he talked about that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because we obviously love Brandon. He's a Hall of Fame person and all that. It just, I know he was struggling, criticism. Yeah, everybody talked about JPP and
Earl Thomas
and all that. And he overcame that. And he's the one who lasted.
Yeah, he talked about that too, Adam. That's good. It's really good stuff.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I know his career like the back of my hand, and as well as you do. But you covered him very closely as a beat reporter, and it didn't start off well, man, for him at all. Where I remember the short arms. He's really not 6'2".
Right.
Eagles reach. They traded up for him. They traded up for him. Was it that what they did?
They did, I believe, trade up for him. Yeah. A couple of spots, if I'm not mistaken.
It didn't look
right,
good
because everybody thought they were trading up to take Earl Thomas.
Oh, is that right?
When they were trading up, everyone thought it was to take Earl Thomas.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would love to know what their thought process was, because there were a lot of knocks on BG because of the size and remember what did Clay Harbor told us? Didn't Clay say that Chip Kelly wanted him to be a linebacker or a fullback? What did he do with?
Yeah, in fact, Brandon even talked about that. Chip Kelly turned him into an outside linebacker. Oh, you mean Chip Kelly wanted to turn Clay into a linebacker, right?
I can't remember, but the reason why I bring that up is because Clay told us on one of the shows we did with him recently about that. And then what did Chip want to do with BG? Did he just
turned him into an outside linebacker? But what he really wanted to do, there was another player that Chip had brought in that more fit the size, length.
Was it Brandon Bear?
No, not. He was a DN. This was an outside linebacker. His name was Travis Long, from Washington State, who was supposed to be like a really good player, but he wound up tearing up both of his knees in college. And Chip was going to make him into the player he was always going to be. And Brandon, this is true. This is absolutely true. Brandon's not embellishing the story. Chip wanted Travis Long to be that guy and was not going to bring Brandon back, but Brandon got re-signed anyway, and he beat it. And Travis Long, what happened is Travis Long got hurt again.
Well, got hurt, but I
ACL, and then that was it. They had to bring Brandon back and make him into the player that he was.
Wow. The Chips and Dave Ball, the receiver from
New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, Maine, right? Because he set all these college records. Chip had of his guys. A Brandon Bear guy was super tall. Did he go to Cal? Maybe, does that sound right?
Brandon Bear was an Oregon guy.
Oregon, okay, Oregon, yeah.
That's where
So,
Chip came from. Remember Oregon?
right, Pac-10, yeah, we're now
Yeah.
Pac-12. But anyway, yeah, see that, and then Chip wanted his guy, Deion Jordan, which we detailed several years ago, and thankfully for the
Miami.
Dolphins took him. And the Eagles they got their fallback option, and Lane Johnson could be a Hall of Famer possible.
Yes, the Dolphins absolutely saved Chip Kelly from himself. That is 100% true.
Unbelievable. It really is. Chip, what a disaster. Anyway, good luck, Chip.
So did the Titans, by the way, by not trading Marcus Mariota. So
do the deal.
The number one pick. I mean, yeah.
Anyway, great 2015.
Good stuff. All right, so going on one with Brandon Graham is going to be great. Inside the Tape will be out on Thursday with Clay Harbor and Greg Cosell. They've been really gelling, and their breakdowns are fantastic. Then, of course, on Sunday, ITB pregame live, myself, Adam, Greg Cosell, Jason Avant. We believe that will once again be a 10 a.m. start. If that, for any reason, is to change, we will definitely let everybody know. And then post-game, myself, Adam, Clay Harbor, right afterward. As we've been doing every week, we've had great chats with former Eagles quarterbacks coach John DeFilippo. Those are for our Patreon members. Every time I put out a link to it, people who aren't members wind up clicking on it, wanting to see it. And then, there's the paywall, and then they wind up subscribing. So we appreciate all of our new members, and just letting people know that that's how good DeFilippo's breakdowns and his stories and his personality is, that people are really dying to get on to it. So again, that's insidethebirds.com/Patreon to become a member. And that's just part of all the great content we're giving our Patreon subscribers.
Yeah, I was just going to say the other thing that we started asking John, other than getting into with John, is how things work with coaching. Okay, how do you decide the running back rotation, wide receiver rotations, and pass protection rules? And we talked about in that last show the Aaron Donald rules, how you handle him, and we went back to 2017, the Super Bowl year, and just how the challenges of coaches when they face great football players. In this case, John's an offensive coach, so when you would face great defensive players, and then of course, as you've mentioned before, the great story about how literally Von Miller, who's still playing, who just came back last week for the Bills, kept him up at night. And he I guess he had a nightmare. He woke up on like a cold sweat.
Yeah. Imagine having that kind of an edge over an opposing coach that you're going up against.
Oh man. So it's to subscribe to that, patreon.com/insidethebirds and join our growing membership there, and love to see with you guys. And by the way, I got my chat tonight, as we always do, from 8 to 8:30 Eastern on our Discord channel.
That's right. And I believe next Tuesday we'll be doing another Ask ITB live stream. All right, let's get some transactions that are really important that have happened in the last 24 to 48 hours. Biggest one, obviously, is Nakobe Dean was activated into the 21-day window. The Eagles didn't even wait till Wednesday. They activated him on Tuesday, so he's ready for practice Wednesday. We assume, he's going to get out there. That's why you would activate him into the practice window. Yep. And we'll have to see how things go. We'll wait. Now here's the thing that you always point out that is very important. When you're in the practice window, you do not appear on the injury report, correct?
Except it's funny you bring that up. And I don't know why the league did this, and I love it. So I just got this like 2 weeks ago. My bad for not mentioning it. At least I don't think I did. But anyway, you just brought this up. So what happened was the league decided this year, and I don't know why they did this, but it's a great thing that they did. If a player practices and is on a reserve list, they have to list what he did, full limited. And they also get a game status designation on Friday for a Sunday game.
Right. So wait, you're saying if he practices, then he will have to appear.
Yeah.
Why did that not apply? Oh no, you're right. This is all new. I forgot.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it. And one of the teams put the language on the bottom of an email. I'm like, what is this? This is awesome. I'm like, now, because for fantasy, also, if you play fantasy, because that was the thing, you would never get any information on previously if a guy's on IR, but he's designated for return. In this case, Dean is designated for return, which means the club's got 21 days to make a decision. So each day, if he starts working today, which he almost certainly would, it's Wednesday and they have a Sunday game, each day they have to say whether it was full or limited.
Now
And then
that
for
would
practice,
have
they
to
have to
include
put-
then estimations of practice through a walkthrough, because today most likely the
Oh, that's
Eagles
right.
have a
That's
walkthrough.
right. They always do
And
Wednesday. Always,
right,
yeah.
always do. And so
Yep.
their injury report will be identified as an estimation of an injury
Correct.
report because of a walkthrough. But if
Right.
Nakobe
Right.
Dean participates, they're going to have to list what he would have participated as, limited or full.
Correct. So your report that you put on our show was 4 weeks, right? From the
Yes.
time he sprained his foot, we did confirm it was a sprained foot, exactly. Was about in the general neighborhood 4 weeks. Well, and that's why they put him on IR, because it's 4 games,
Mhm.
and they didn't have their bye week, so it's 4 games, and here we are. So yeah, you know what I'm thinking? Why they did it on Tuesday? Because other teams did it as well. It may be just to the way the league sees it, is that the transaction, if they put it on Wednesday, wouldn't go through to 4 p.m. Eastern. So maybe it's the day before that they have to do it, something like that. I know there's some technicalities with this thing, because as you said, it makes, why would you do it the day before? Wouldn't you want the extra day? I just don't
Yeah.
understand why they do that. So
Right.
anyway,
All right, so that we'll get more Nakobe Dean news as the week progresses. The team will have until 4 o'clock on Saturday to activate him onto the 53. Now,
for him to play,
or
yes.
back onto the 53, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Now
To play.
that's significant, because Braden Mann, the punter, just reverted back to the practice squad along with Bradley Roby, the new corner. Now, Mann is out of his elevations, been elevated 3 times.
Yep.
So if the Eagles want him, they have to sign him to the 53-man roster. Now, the one thing I don't think they have to do, though, Adam, is make a corresponding move, because I'm pretty sure when they put Cam Jurgens on IR on Saturday, they didn't make a corresponding move. So I think they have a slot open with Jurgens now on IR on the 53-man roster.
I think you are correct. On Saturday, yes, they did not do that. Yes, and which would suggest to me that they must have known that this was going to happen. You know, that they probably knew that Dean was going to start practicing.
Yep.
And now, also, I mean, the other thing is not that we haven't heard any teams looking to do this. So Roby is on the Eagles practice squad. Remember, he was elevated, so he reverts back by rule. That's Mann and Roby reverted back on Monday morning. But I do wonder, since he's on the practice squad, I mean, because every team now gets access to the Eagles game tape, and we'll get into where that was surprising how much he played. Holy smokes.
It really wasn't surprising after the first quarter, though.
No, I get that. But again, and I know he was with the Saints in August, but man, the first game, and Roby's funny. He talked about it after the game, how I guess I don't have the quotes from the game exactly, but I just remember reading the quotes that were out there from the reporters. It sure didn't sound like he was supposed to play as much as he did. But he said that the teammates are great with him, and he whatever questions he had, he got them answered. But it goes to show you once again, as you brought up the last week about, and now Linval Joseph was out way longer than Roby was from being with the team. If a guy looks good in practice and they think the guy's in game shape based on what they saw in practice, the guy's going to play, and he could play a lot. You can't just say the guy won't play. We knew Friday was going to play. That was never a question. The question was, how much would he play?
Right.
I was not expecting him to be their lead nickel in that game, but as you said, the other 2 guys, boy, that didn't last very long.
No, it did not last very long. And I would say, the reason why Bradley Roby played as much as he did, which was 25 snaps, 45% of the defense, was the same reason Linval Joseph played as much as he did last year in his debut, not just because they were conditioned, but because they needed those guys to play, or else they were headed for a disaster. We will get into that. So back to the 53, though. So they can sign Braden Mann, if I'm correct about this, which I think I am, without having to make a corresponding move. And they're going to need to sign him if they want him to be able to be eligible to punt.
Yep. Oh, yeah, for sure.
But if they want to activate Nakobe Dean by 4 p.m. Saturday, then they will have to make a corresponding move. And I'm not quite sure what direction they go in, but something tells me the corners we were just talking about, that's probably an area where whether it's Goodrich or Ricks, I don't know. I mean, they've got 4 tight ends, but they've said they want to keep 4 tight ends. I don't know where the move has. And by the way, they still have, well, no, they don't. They won't have a game in between, but they're going to have to make a decision at some position here. I guess the name that sticks out to me right now would be Rashad Penny, but I don't know if they want to go with just 3 running backs, but Rashad has not really contributed at all to this ball club so far. So we'll see. I don't want to sit here and go through every single name that could be a guy to be a candidate, but those are the names I think that would sort of hit you that first.
They would, because now the only thing about releasing Penny would be the only running back. Now, of course, they could release him and then sign him to the practice squad. There's no waivers right now, so he's a vested veteran. He was just contract terminated, and he could sign wherever he wants. But the only guy they have on the practice squad at running back is Brian Kobach, who was signed a couple weeks ago. He was actually signed last month in week 3. Who was with the Seahawks in training camp, the Vikings last year in training camp. He has no playing experience, so the question then would be, I mean, as you said, do you really want to leave your roster with 3 guys, but no fallback option if one of those guys can't play? I mean, that's just a little risky.
Right. Right. I think it's safe to say Nick Morrow, even if Nakobe Dean's going to be playing, that linebacker spot is going to stay on the. I would think it's going to stay on the 53.
He might. I mean, look, one thing we could say, Morrow's been so good and he's such a surprise. And we know he was cut for the season started, but who knew he'd play this well?
Yeah.
The question will be, if once Dean's ready, are they gonna have a rotation? Will Morrow keep it? Will they stick Dean back in and have Morrow back on? We don't know yet, because they first have to see how Dean looks physically, how he moves. This is his first significant injury.
Yeah.
Since he's been here, right? Well, he wasn't hurt last year, I don't think.
Yeah, we barely played last year, so he didn't really get hurt that much. Yeah. And one you always look at special teams for a thing like this. Mario Goodrich, who did not hold down that nickel back spot early on, he only played 5 snaps of special teams as well. So, I mean, clearly occupying a roster spot, but not really doing that much. Even Eli Ricks played a lot more on special teams. He played 12, which was 60% of the snaps. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on there. Obviously the Eagles have a decision to make, and when they make it, we'll have everybody informed on that. What else? So, and as far as injuries, I believe there were no injuries coming out of the game.
Now, they did not list any in game. However, as we've seen over the years, we call it the pop-up Wednesday injury. Guys are sore after the game, and they get treatment, and sometimes they have an injury. So we'll see later today at around 4:00 when they release their injury report, if there's anyone that we didn't know about. But let's go over their injury report from last week, and we could update some of this information. This is what this Wednesday show is always about. Rashad Penny he didn't feel right last Saturday, and he wound up not being available. He had an illness. And obviously he's going to be inactive most weeks. If the other 3 guys are healthy, he probably will not dress based on what we've seen so far. Fletcher Cox obviously did not play. This is his 3rd different injury, but this is the most serious. He's got the back injury, which he had an epidural for, which is not going to cure the issue. I mean, it just it relaxes. It makes you feel your back better, but it doesn't cure it. So they have to get through that. Marlon Tui Pelotu, the D tackle, did not play or practice last week. Same with Cox. So we have to see what they can do or not do this week. But it's triceps, and again, he did not work. So that's why Moro Joma, by the way, did play sparingly. Had, I think, 4 or 5 snaps on defense. Sidney Brown did not miss the 2nd straight game with a hamstring. And we'll see if he can start working this week. And that's pretty much it. Their list is getting smaller, thankfully. But as we just said, we'll see if there are any new names. By the way, we have seen some new names over the last couple of weeks that were not, like Tui Pelotu was not listed during the previous game, and he just showed up with a triceps champion.
That was the Friday pop-up, right?
Yep. Oh, was it Friday? Yeah, I don't remember if it was Wednesday or Friday. I don't remember.
Either, yeah, I forget what day it was, but it was kind of
that was a surprise.
Yeah,
we didn't know about that one.
All right, Inside the Birds is presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. Let's pause for a moment to hear more from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right, let's give some early some injury update. Like Jets for this Eagles Jets game. What's that week?
Yeah.
I can't believe it's going to be week 6 already.
Six.
I mean,
Yeah, that's it.
after
I know.
that game, a third of the season is going to be over with. More than a third.
Jeez.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard to
So we
believe.
passed the quarter mark. Yeah.
So
good.
Bertie told me that Aaron Rodgers won't be playing on Sunday. Is that
He
accurate?
said
Can you confirm?
Yeah. He thinks he's coming back for the playoffs. First of all, they have to make it. At least he thinks he's been very up, like with Pat McAfee, he's acting like he's doing all he can to come back for the playoffs if they make it. But Zach Wilson starts for him. Wilson did not play well against the Broncos, played very well against the Chiefs, other than that fumble, but made some incredible throws against the Chiefs. Like, didn't start off that game well, but then he got hot and got into a rhythm.
Yeah.
But he's playing a defense, and the Eagles could bring the pressure. So we'll get into that more in the Friday show. Dwayne Brown, the left tackle, has had really bad shoulder problems the last 2 seasons. He's on IR. Mekhi Becton, who started the season at right tackle, has now moved to left tackle. And he's healthy. His weight is way down. He's lost over 50 pounds. And then they got terrible news this week. Their second major player with a torn Achilles, obviously Rodgers, Elijah Vera Tucker, who was the starting guard.
He's a good player. He's a good player.
Out of USC, was the first rounder. He had moved to right tackle. He's out for the season. Max Mitchell, who started last year a bunch of games, he filled in at right tackle after Vera Tucker got hurt. Now, Billy Turner really followed the NFL closely. You might remember that name. Who's been with the Broncos and the Dolphins and the Packers. He could actually start. He can play right tackle. He could play guard as well. He's a pretty good backup offensive lineman. Has been in the league for seemingly forever. So they'll have to make that decision. But, look, this is what they're going through with their offensive line. And then defensively, DJ Reed has been terrific. He didn't play last week due to concussion. His backup, Brandon Eccles, didn't play with a hamstring problem. They didn't play or practice last week. Bryce Hall, who's in his final year of his rookie deal out of Virginia, he started last week. That killed their depth. But they played Russell Wilson, who didn't play great, so they got away with it. And at safety, Chuck Clark's out for the season. He wanted to start, and he was going to start, but he tore an ACL, and he's out for the season. Formerly of Baltimore. Tony Adams, who was an undrafted free agent out of Illinois, who played with Sidney Brown there. He's been starting. Really nice stories in his second year as an undrafted free agent last year, but they're banged up, man, way worse than the Eagles right now, and they're hanging into 2 and 3.
I'm telling you, I know they've moved the ball better offensively, but with this offensive, losing Elijah Vera Tucker was like, if you were to list with the Jets after losing Rodgers, after the start they got off to, if you were to say, give me like one guy who, if this guy gets hurt, you're really going to be worried about the Jets just completely. Elijah would have been my top 5 because their offensive line already is not great. I don't know how well Becton is or isn't playing as a left tackle, but he hasn't played it in a while until this year after losing all that weight. But Vera Tucker's a good player, and that line has had a lot of issues. I mean, you saw it on the opening night, and Rodgers getting, harassed immediately. That's tough for them, man. Obviously losing a player like Garrett Wilson would be really bad too. But I mean, the point is, we know how important the lines are. Your offensive line and defensive line, you want to compete in this NFL, you got to have some decent play there, especially if you want to beat the Eagles. And losing Vera Tucker is not good for them. That's
now the kid, Joe Tippmann, who could play center, right guard, is playing right guard. He's been terrific. Like he
has been. That's right.
Second rounder. Yeah, he's done well. Laken Tomlinson's sort of a guy who's been around with the Lions and the Niners, and he's been okay. And somehow they got Connor McGovern back, their center. He thought he was going to get a big free agent deal. He did not. So he's back at center. So that's good. And we mentioned Becton at left tackle, who got the he got the memo. He had to lose a lot of weight. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option, but we'll get more into him on Friday. We'll get a better idea of talking to people how he's done. But look, they're a work in progress. They've got some talent. Breece Hall's been phenomenal. Come back from the ACL. He looked really good against the Broncos last week. And you mentioned Garrett Wilson. Alan Lazard comes over from Green Bay, and they got this great returner, Xavier Gibson, who's undrafted free agent. You might have seen on Hard Knocks. Mm-hmm. They've got talent, man. It's just
they do. Their defense is good. Yeah, just
really good.
That offensive line. Yikes! All right, let's wrap up some thoughts here on the Eagles Rams. We've talked to people. I've watched the All 22. A couple of things really jumped out at me on offense that we'll get into. Adam, what is your sort of big takeaway now? A couple of days later from talking to people about the Eagles on offense.
Yeah, just to back up what we said when we actually had our post-game show with Clay Harbor Sunday night, the physical play that their line had, where they dominated, Hurts was so physical running the football. So were the running backs. Gainwell was terrific in pass protection. I know you wrote about it. Brian Johnson talked about it. I mean, Gainwell, and that's why we saw early in the season. I understand why Gainwell was in the first game against New England, but obviously not playing Swift early at all was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Now Swift's obviously their lead back, and they have a good rotation with he and Gainwell. But Hurts was so dynamic running the football. I mean, he looks like a running back because he makes that cut up field. He sticks his foot in the ground, and he was so physical. Oh, also heavy 11 personnel again with Watkins back. It makes you wonder. Stoll, by the way, blocked very well when he was in the game, but he didn't really play a lot because they went with heavy 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand what Sirianni was talking. He was asked about why Watkins is, after he made the mistake, everybody saw it. He went the wrong way. Watkins really has not done much. Let's call it like it is. I mean, I know he had the hamstring injury, but last year, he's just not a natural slot receiver. He's miscast.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish they'd use Zaccheaus over him in that. I get it. Watkins is more explosive, but you have to ask yourself this question. What does he really do if he's not making plays downfield, which really he can do? We know he can do that because he's super explosive, but they haven't done that yet. I know he just got back, but at some point he's got to do that. And Zaccheaus barely played. So the question is, what role does he really serve that's tangible?
I would agree with you. I think that, I don't know, some of the questions and the answers from the coordinators and Sirianni over the last 3 days make me wonder if we're not going to see a little bit of a gravitation back towards Zaccheaus. You can't deny that when he was in the game, he was far more productive, right? I mean, he had the big third down catch against Washington. He had the big touchdown in his first game that he played for Watkins being out. So it feels like when Zaccheaus is in there, you hear his name, the ball goes his way every once in a while. And when Hurts really the touchdown that he caught a couple weeks ago, remember, Hurts was just about to get leveled. I think he did get hit. And if he holds on to that ball a second more, he might get sacked and fumbled. So that was a big, big moment for Hurts to make that throw to Zaccheaus. And again, third down against Washington, fourth quarter, makes a really important catch. So we know Nick Sirianni loves Quez Watkins, the best number 2 I could ever coach, yada, yada, whatever. We know that
it could be right.
He's got a thing for vertical ability and speed, and that's great. But you can't help but notice the juxtaposition watching both guys play that maybe Zaccheaus is a little bit better for what they need. They got a lot of guys who can stretch the field vertically between Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and even Dallas Goedert, who had a nice 9-yarder. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a good interior guy like Zaccheaus who gives you a little bit more reliability over the middle.
Yeah, I mean, he's a better slot because he's played inside and outside. I unless he's running a 9 route or post route, I just don't see the value in the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But these are things we talked about months ago that it was a mistake last year, and it's just going to show. I mean, because he's got elite speed. I mean, he really is explosive, and that's really been his existence here, quite frankly.
Yeah,
as you said, Sirianni and I assume his assistants really like Watkins in a specific way. We're just not seeing it. I get it. He can draw coverage because teams know when he's on the field what he can do in terms of getting downfield, but go ahead and use him that way.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the fact of the matter is it hasn't happened. And then the other thing offensively, the red zone numbers are awful, but yet you have to have context. Some of them are just when they're running out the clock. I mean, they're now 27th in red zone touchdowns, 42%. Last 3 games, only 31%. But again, sometimes they're running, they're ahead most games. So their focus is not trying to score. It's trying to bleed the clock sometimes. So I think I don't see it being a big deal. I know it's kind of weird. I know some of it. Look, they clearly sometimes have not executed. They haven't run the ball that well in the red zone. But I'm not. It'll get corrected. I'm not really worried about it.
You just hit it on the head. What jumps out to me, which is a surprise, because they've run the ball so well in every other facet of a game, but for whatever reason, they're just not running the ball well in the red zone. So it makes you wonder, is it play calling, like play design, or are teams sort of expecting them to run? If teams are, can't they kind of, use more play action? Who knows what the deal is? But for whatever reasons, it's kind of looked a little mucky, like there have been some bad screens that the blocking wasn't there for them. There have been some
the bubble
runs,
screens. Kill the bubble screen.
third and 11 run like 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Yeah. I
what
think
was that call?
I think it's a cauldron of a bunch of things going wrong,
Yeah.
and I think maybe they're trying too hard to correct it. But I agree with you. I think I would be shocked if by the end of the year there were a bottom 3 red zone offense. I just think that
they'll be in the upper half.
Yeah,
they'll be in the yes, they have too much talent. They'll be in the upper half, and you've got a new offensive coordinator. There's some growing pains here, but the good thing is Brian Johnson's been here since they started, and he knows the personnel very well, and he's done a nice job, by the way.
right.
Their running game is terrific. Suapeta, by the way, played very well. The question with him is if Jurgens is not back in obviously after he serves the 4 games, how's he playing when the schedule gets started? I mean, we'll have to see, but so far so good. And yet another great find by Howie Roseman, and obviously, and their college staff, whoever has that area, and also Jeff Stoutland, another Jeff Stoutland special.
Glad you brought that up. I wanted to remark on that because I did do a piece on this for InsideTheBirds.com, made a lot of GIFs that I think give a really good visual for I would say the excellent plan that the Eagles had for Aaron Donald. It wasn't just we're going to do our best to block him.
Yeah.
And that the difficulty that we talked about with Aaron Donald and trying to block him is that you have no idea on any given snap where he's going to line up. And after watching all 22, I can tell you he lined up as a 0 technique, as a 3 technique, as a 5 technique, and as a wide 9. All right. He lined up in every single spot. And by the way, just because he lined up there doesn't mean that's where he rushed from. He stunted, he looped. There was one play where he lined up as a wide 9 and ended up rushing the A gap next to Kelsey, the center. I mean, imagine how much land you have to cross there to get from one place to another that quickly. So while I will always give the credit to the players first, I think the whole offensive line, because every single one of those guys at one point had to block Aaron Donald. But what I really appreciated, and yes, Suapeta played well, but the plan was clearly to get as many bodies on on Aaron Donald as possible. I did not see too many times where either Sua or Mailata or anybody else had to single block Aaron Donald. The Eagles obviously said, we're going to take 2 guys, sometimes 3, and block him. We're going to chip him, which adds either a 3rd or a 4th. We're going to get the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands quickly, right? That's why you saw so many, you saw some screens to both DeAndre Swift, to Quez Watkins, to Dallas Goedert. So this was a well kind of woven all-out plan from top to bottom, from blocking schemes to play calling to just where, just to studying where he's going to be and knowing what to do at the right time, because he lined up everywhere. He gave it his best. And every time he rushed at him, there were 2 or 3 guys ready to barricade him. But as you know, if you're a 5-man offensive line and you're dedicating 2 guys to one player, that means your other 3 guys are probably going to be having to block 4, which means your tight end and your running back become part of the blocking scheme. And I got to give a lot of credit to Jack Stoll. You mentioned him, to Goddard, and to Kenny Gainwell. Now, the play that everybody remembers Kenny Gainwell making, I don't think they realized how he was doubly awesome on this play. This is the 3rd and 7 that he catches from Jalen Hurts and kind of meets the guy at the sticks and gets the first down, right? I don't know if a lot of people realize that on that play, because the Eagles were using 3 guys to block Aaron Donald, that first Kenny Gainwell had to come across Jalen Hurts and block an edge rusher, right? Block the edge rusher, block him again because Hurts starts, to sort of backpedal to get out of all the traffic. And then he leaks out to the right side to catch the pass and then beats up a guy at the sticks to get the first down.
That was incredible. I didn't realize all that.
Is that not amazing?
Because when we talked Sunday night, I'd mentioned that play when he physically went through that defender, I was like, wow, that's really impressive. And then you add the context that you just outlined. about what he did leading up to that on that same play is pretty remarkable. But man, and then another thing, Swift looked really good running the football. It doesn't show in his yards per carry. Only 4.1, but he handled 23 total touches, maybe a little bit more than they probably wanted, because they have to. You know how they pulled him in the game, the one game where they had the lead. They pulled him in the Bucs game. They took him out in the fourth quarter to preserve him, which was smart. But the bottom line is, I mean, it all worked well, and they really should have had more points. That was surprising to me.
Yeah. To finish off the point on, well, if Hurts doesn't throw that interception, which is, one bad pass, and he generally was pretty good all game, they probably score a touchdown. If he just leads them a little more and they score a touchdown, then it's 30-14, and it feels like an entirely different type of game. So yeah, they did leave meat on the bone, and you're thinking 23 points, they could have done more, but literally one pass could have made a huge difference there. But I do want to wrap up the whole offensive line talk on this, because I want to give some credit to Stoutland, because almost everything the Eagles did up front was because their blocking schemes was to guard against not just Donald, but the Rams probably stunted more than any team against them. I mean, it's not just Aaron Donald. They ran a lot of tackle end stunts with Donald, and then within that, they would have two guys stunt, and then a third, like a stand-up linebacker, would come and loop around the edge. So he's also looping around. So it's technically you have like a stunt within a stunt. And
the loopers were tough, man.
Yeah, a looper, right. So what the Eagles did really well, Adam, was pass. What you have to do as an offensive lineman there is block your guy and then observe. If your guy leaves, you have to observe the oncoming stunter. So you're passing your guy off to the next guy and taking the stunter. And if there's three guys doing it, then all three linemen on that side, because they did do a lot of slide protection, have to all communicate. And honestly, there were times it was very rhythmic. It was very procedural. You just see Opeta, bam, Lane Johnson takes him. Kelsey goes and looks for work, helps him out. It was it had to be the result of a lot of work throughout the week and a lot of game planning from Geoff Stoutland. So a lot of teams can't execute the way as well as the Eagles did. So that's that kind of stuff you don't see when the game's going on, but all 22 will tell you. And it was almost poetry in motion at times with their blocking scheme. It was really impressive.
Can't wait to talk to Flip about this, and we'll ask John about the red zone stuff too.
Absolutely.
For people. So no, that would be offensively, and you just filled in the blanks, and then defensively.
Yeah, before we get to defense, I just want to remind everyone, check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience of all their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's also pause to hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You'll get a great deal. All right, let's talk about this defense. I'm excited about this.
Yeah. By the way, Sky Motor Cars right off of 202 in Westchester. Cannot miss it. Now,
is that called Concord Pike in Westchester or just?
Yes, technically okay. Concord Pike is 202. Yes.
Gotcha.
But getting back to the defense, so they had the highest blitz rate of the season. Really, the last two were the highest blitz rated games. And Sean Desai called a really interesting game. Now I will tell you, a couple people told me that. Well, the 2-2 Atwell, that should have been a touchdown. Stafford missed it.
Man. Oh.
That was a touchdown. I mean, that was they just missed him. And then I was told there was another play. I was driving, and someone who graded Eagles tape told me that the Rams should have had a second touchdown in the second half. But again,
I will tell you, on the 2-2 Atwell touchdown, Cooper Kupp was also wide open right behind him for a touchdown. So either the ball could have gone to two different receivers and both were open, and it was clearly, as we talked about in the pregame show, that was motion, bunch formation, and the Eagles not being I guess they were confused about it. They obviously had you want to call that busted coverage or they just didn't know what they were doing on that play.
Ooh, okay. Well, sorting, they did a pretty good job of sorting after. Okay. after they got through the first quarter, then it started to get much better. They had a couple breakdowns in the second half, but hey, they didn't give up any points, incredibly, in the second half. And we'll talk more in the our pregame show what Avant and Cosell saw. But Milton Williams started the game, played 59% of snaps. He's really good, by the way. He's one of the better backup defensive linemen in the National Football League. Like, unless you really follow the Eagles, people don't know who the heck he is. He's a really good football player. Like,
he's going to get a good contract.
Yeah, it'll be hard for the Eagles to keep him, but really good football player. And as we said earlier, I just did not see Bradley Roby playing the most nickel snaps. He wound up playing in 45% of the defensive snaps, 25 snaps overall. That was interesting, and it was all nickel. So now because the way that they use the receivers, Kupp and Nakobe are essentially the reduced outside receivers. That means, yes, they're technically outside if you want to call them that, but they're really inside a lot. So that's why sometimes you would see the Eagles have two corners inside. That had something to do with why Roby played as much. And plus, he understood. I'm sure he's gone against the Rams before, so he knew what he was doing. And that was pretty interesting how he played more than he probably thought and most people thought. And then this one I did not know about until I went through a couple things. Terrell Edmunds never played on defense in that game.
Yeah, I know. Well, Justin, this is not surprising, right? Because Justin Evans was back. And when Justin Evans was healthy for week 1 and 2, I don't think Edmunds was on the field.
Yeah, but to not give him a breather? The safeties played the entire game, every snap.
Yeah. Well, the Rams were trying to clearly pass the ball a whole lot, and the Eagles don't want Edmunds out there when the other team is passing the ball.
Here's the thing. So what did we learn by that? C.D. Brown will be the third safety once he's healthy. And I don't know if they even see Edmunds as the fourth safety. Now they could be in the business of signing a veteran free agent. Who knows what happens at the trade deadline, which is the last Tuesday of this month, so now less than 3 weeks. And then we'll see what they do at corner if they bring another one in. But they're playing. I mean, wow, Evans and Blankenship. We know obviously Blankenship's firmly entrenched as a starter, but wow, that is telling about Terrell Edmunds. Boy, that has not worked at all.
No, and you wonder. We were going through some names of people who could be, who could get released when the Eagles activate Nakobe Dean. Maybe Terrell Edmunds' name pops up on that too, because like you said, I mean, he's only playing special teams.
Well, who would be right? And then Brown would be the third safety.
Right.
Well, who would be the fourth safety? And you need to have at least a guy on the practice squad, right? Oh, well, they did
because they have Goodrich and Ricks and Ringo, and because Goodrich and Ricks are basically playing nickelback roles, which is like what a backup safety would do. I mean, you could make that argument that they could be your fourth safety.
An emergency situation, but McCollum was called up. Tristan McCollum was called up for one game, right?
There you go.
For one game.
Yep.
But they could use at least a veteran safety in the practice squad. And then, I mean, it's funny. Speaking of veterans, I mean, the Bills, they brought in, and I'm sure he'll get in shape on the practice squad, Josh Norman.
Oh man,
who was not, he had not been with the team, and he was with the team last year. And was with the Panthers. So I mean, now he's 35. But that's what the practice squad's for. Just let the guy get in game shape.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. But they've got a number that they really need. They got to be careful here because Evans has had a major injury history. Just got back from an injury.
Yeah, but they could bring Edmunds back to the practice squad too. I mean, if they
by cutting him, because he's not subject to waivers before the trade deadline. Yeah, they could do that. We'll see what happens. They've got an interesting dilemma to see what they do here.
Yeah, very much so. The last thing I want to leave on this is that I suspect, and I'm looking forward to us talking to Greg Cosell about this on the pregame show and Jason Avant. I suspect that Sean Desai is probably not blitzing at a much higher rate than Jonathan Gannon did, but he is blitzing at a little bit higher, especially the last 2 weeks. And I think he's playing a lot more varieties of coverages.
Yes, he is.
Different times.
Yeah,
I think I'm now starting to see. You remember how I talked about the Fangio concept? It's about confusing the quarterbacks, not about always pressuring the quarterback. And we always felt with Gannon that even when he did blitz, it's like the same kind of blitz and the same kind of time, or he might show cover 2 and then drop down to cover 1, or show cover 1, drop down to spinning safeties, as they call it. But that's it. Sean Desai is doing a whole lot of difference. I mean, sometimes it's like cover one robber. Sometimes it's 22 man. Sometimes it's the blitz. Sometimes it's, man on one side, zone on the other. I think he's got this team playing so many different types of coverages. And that has been I just think that that the football people who didn't like the way Gannon ran the defense, I think that they probably would appreciate the size approach to it a little bit more.
I mean, he's running his version of Fangio with other influences. Maybe Chuck Pagano, we'll talk to Chuck for Patreon probably around midseason, get his thoughts when he sees from the Eagles. And I know he knows Sean very well because Sean coached for him for 2 years, I think 1 or 2 years with the Bears. But it's interesting. And I'd like to get a better idea of exactly what the Eagles did in the second half. People are giving them credit for making adjustments, but I'd like to know exactly what it is. I know they mixed the coverages up. We know they did that, but I would like to get nailed down exactly what the coverages were. And we'll see if Bradley Roby can continue this surprise success after one game. And when they threw at him, the Rams didn't get anything off of him hardly at all. And he did, the coaches will tell you it's not so much what they do when they throw at you, what you do when they're not throwing the ball at you. Are you line up correctly? Or you're where you're supposed to be? We'll get more information on that for Friday's show. Our next time you and I will be together will be Friday morning at 6 a.m.
That's right, 6 a.m.
All right.
That'll be the Inside the Birds game preview pod where we break down the Eagles versus the Jets in week 6. That's right, 6 weeks into the season already. I can't believe it. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds. It's the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.